Easy. Okay, well, morning everyone, and we'll get going with the Council of Governors meeting. We'll be saying hello to some people as we go through, but welcome to all of you. Any apologies for absence, Julie?
Yeah, we've got quite a few apologies. Apologies
Okay.
from Julian Ems and Alex is deputising. Deborah, Tom, Michael Karim, Patrick Clark, who's our new West Berkshire Councillor Governor, Jenny, and then we've got apologies from Naomi, Rebecca, Sally, and Mark Day.
Okay, all right, thanks for that. Any declarations of interest? Okay, minutes of the last formal meeting. I think it's the 25th. Oh no, when was it? The 12th of June. Any corrections, please? Oh yes, okay, Guy.
Yeah, thank you. I noticed on page, where's it gone? Page 8. It says Guy asked if corporate services, IT, and finance received complaints. I think one of those was meant to be compliments.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think there's probably too many compliments to count for finance anyway. But just saying.
Okay, thanks so much, Guy. Anything else? Okay, and then the private meeting, any corrections? You don't. In which case, let's go to Julie for the election results paper.
Yeah, it's just to formally note the outcome of the recent Council of Governors elections, and just to note we need to have a new election for a new clinical governor as well, following Tina Dunn's, she's left the trust.
Okay, all right, thanks so much. Oh, Graham's got a question. Graham.
It's not a question, just a comment that the three of us were in a different meeting because the link, one of the links in one of the emails took us again to the pre-meet. So we were sitting there and I'm thinking, hang on, that's the wrong title. So Mark and Aaron were in the meeting with me. Now, hopefully they're finding the same link as I've just found in the latest email, but there was a problem with the link, so bear with us.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Graham, for that. I don't know whether we need to take any action, Julie, or not. Or...
Hey, Mark Day, did you say? Sorry, yeah. Who's? Okay, I'll send the link.
I'm here though, Julie. Thanks. I've got through as well, so I'm okay.
Perfect.
But I don't know if Arian's managed to make it.
No, I can't see
the link.
Okay. Right, go back to the election results paper. I think it's factual. Any corrections? Any questions about it? All right. Well, welcome to everyone who's been elected or re-elected. So let's move on then to the external auditors report to council. Ernst & Young. Have we ever Ernst & Young here?
You do indeed.
Oh, hello. Do you want to take over?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. So there's myself and Alison Kennett with you from Ernst & Young. Alison Kennett's the audit manager. I'm your partner. And just to summarise very quickly what we do for you as an organisation, we have two responsibilities, key responsibilities. One is around the financial statements audit, and the other is around a value for money commentary that we produce. In your papers is our final report, which is the kind of public report that summarises the outcomes from our financial statements audit, but also the commentary that we've produced on value for money. So if I just go into some headline messages, and these are summarised for you on page 6 of our report, within the executive summary. So the financial statements are unqualified, and we issued the auditor's report on the 19th of June. If I just expand on that a little bit, so the fact that the financial statements was unqualified is great, and we would really expect that to be the case, and that means that we didn't find any material errors that we didn't actually find any, but had we done so, it would also mean that they were corrected appropriately. But actually, the underlying message there is to get your financial statements signed out with an unqualified opinion on the 19th of June, that far ahead of the deadline, is a huge credit to your teams and everyone who's worked on these, because it's no easy feat. It's ever increasing tight deadline in the NHS. There are a lot of things that have to be pulled together to get to that stage, and also there were some, quite challenging and tricky items that we had to work through this year. And the fact that we were able to do that jointly early on in the process, and some really good pre-planning and project management from both teams, I think, meant that we got to the year-end process and it didn't feel in any way tricky to not only meet the deadline, but obviously get there well ahead of the deadline. So I just wanted to put an acknowledgement out there for all the hard work that went in, and a thanks to Paul and everyone within his team and the wider trust team that helped. There were some amendments to the remuneration report, which we've detailed there, and you can see obviously that all the way through there were no issues, no reasons for referrals to NHS England, no public interest issues, and nothing that we needed to, or that I needed to raise under the formal powers of reporting that I have as your external auditor. And again, we were able to issue the certificate and close the audit down on the 19th of June. Aside from that, I wasn't going to go into any more detail of the report, because I know those of you that want to go in and read it in detail will have done so. But I'm more than happy for myself and Alison to take any questions that you may have.
Maria, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure as always. Thanks to our team for the support they've given to you and for the work they put into the accounts. Thank you. Any questions from governors, please? No, I think we've got no questions. Oh, Paul.
Hi there. It wasn't a question. I just wanted to acknowledge, and I hope Maria doesn't mind. Maria's retiring and has been the lead on our EY lead for the past 3 years. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and say thank you to Maria for all the help over the past 3 years, and particularly in the year just gone, in terms of the help guiding us through getting this signed off early. It really was a good team effort, and just wish her well with her retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Maria, I'm sure we all echo those sentiments. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else on that, can we move on to next item, Alex?
Thanks, Martin. So I'm here for Julian to present the AGM presentation, which if governors are going to be at the AGM, they'll see this afternoon. So it's a bit of a dry run, really. So we know the annual review is looking back to 23-24. I received this presentation yesterday, so let's have a run through, and then we can just take questions. I know Paul will do the financial update summarising the accounts that we've just spoken about. So next slide, please. Can everyone see the slides? Yeah. So governors will know about this. Is for members of the public that may attend the AGM. Just a reminder of who we are, what we do, the systems we work in, the partners we work with. Next slide, please. I can see 4 slides. That's great. Okay, next slide is the mission and vision. If we just scroll onto that, please. So last year, as part of our strategy development, we took the opportunity to update our mission and vision. And if you think about the context of Lord Darcy's review of the NHS and the shift that we need to make to prevention and more out of hospital care, our mission to maximise independence and quality of life really drives the purpose and the aim of the government that's likely to come through in the NHS 10-year plan during the spring. We engaged our staff, our partners around this mission. I think it works very well for us if you think about the services we're providing to our communities. And the vision there really does stretch us on. So a great place to get care, a great place to give care, drives at what we want to do for our patients and for our staff. We know that we've got a motivated workforce. We'll be delivering the best possible care to our patients as well. So what was really important to us in those elements was simplifying our mission and vision so they became memorable and they became really purposeful. And we've had some really good feedback on those too. Next slide, please. So working in a health and care system requires working in partnership. We're playing a major role as a community and mental health service provider in our 2 integrated care systems, so Frimley Health and Care and Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire and Berkshire West. There's a lot of discussion around enhanced collaboration between health and care partners. Really important for us to be working together to do best for our populations and our communities. It is the nature of our services in terms of our links, particularly with acute trusts and local authorities, that collaboration and working together is embedded in the way we work as a trust in our services. We do have some clear partnerships with intent and purpose around collaborative opportunities with Oxford Health, Royal Berkshire and Frimley, and so we play a key role in the system. The aims of integration and out of hospital care coming forward, we're going to be well positioned to move into that space positively. One of the challenges, though, of system working, particularly in the current context of the system design, is there is a lot of senior executives' time committed. So we need to make sure we're working with our partners to be really clear and focused on those elements that working together can really shift and improve for our communities and populations. Next slide, please. We bid farewell to Mahmood, a fantastic non-executive board colleague, and we welcomed warmly Rebecca Burford to the board. So there's just a note here, some key board membership changes. Thank you. Next slide, please. Last year, we also had an externally commissioned, well-led, sorry, not externally commissioned, the board commissioned an external well-led review of the board's governance, leadership in relation to strategy, culture, and governance of the organisation. Came out positively with only a few minor suggestions, and our board assurance framework, which identifies the key risks to delivery of our strategy, was aligned with our new strategy that was published last year, and I'm going to come on to talk about that in the agenda for governors later on. And so the board assurance framework, our risk approach, is all aligned to the strategy. So good outcome, good external assurance around the approach to board governance and leadership. Next slide, please. So looking at our workforce, absolutely critical to delivering our services to our patients and communities. We had some key metrics that I just want to highlight here. Our turnover as an indicator of staff leaving came down from a high of 16.5%, which reached a peak during the pandemic, and is now down to around 12%. And we're beating turnover rates of our ICS partners. Turnover is a really important indicator because it indicates that staff are looking to stay and progress. If they're leaving, they're not looking to do that. And it also builds in a whole heap of work and support as we induct new staff. So we lose that memory. We create process waste every time we need to introduce a new member of staff or lose a member of staff in turnover. So turnover is a really important metric for us. Really good to see that performance improvement. In the NHS staff survey, we are topping our sector in mental health and community trusts for high scores in staff engagement, amongst the highest in the country. And as I said, having high staff engagement directly translates to good patient care and drives on to our mission and vision. We do have a challenge in terms of a very clear gap in the experience of our minority ethnic staff and our white staff, and we have our anti-racism strategy particularly that aims to address that through really clear action, focused priority for the organisation, anti-racism for our staff, and also for our communities where health inequalities exist. Next slide, please. So just a summary of the people promise themes from the staff survey. This is an aggregate view of our performance against the rest of our sector, and you can see the green arrows indicating a statistically significant improvement in a number of the people promise themes, and the star indicates top scoring in staff engagement. So really strong performance around perspectives of staff working in this organisation for Berkshire Healthcare and in our systems. Next slide, please. Again, Darzi indicates that the driving need to move to more digital modes of care, from analogue to digital, as he phrased it. We are leading in terms of our digital maturity and our approach, supported there by these areas of leadership in digital, our online therapies and support, and beginning to automate systems and processes that are more administrative in nature, releasing time to care for our clinicians. And we know that AI is going to be a strong driver in the future. We'll come on later on in the AGM to explain what we're doing around AI, but will be a theme for us, and we want to build on our expertise around digital. Next slide, please. We know there are unwarranted health inequalities in our system. We have just prepared our interim health inequality strategy, which we hope to engage our voluntary sector and communities on. In the meantime, the last year, we've been understanding our data right across Berkshire, understanding where key areas of health inequality are, understanding our variation in outcomes, experience and access for our communities into our services, and just highlighting there an early study on mental health sectioning of Black people in Berkshire. There is very clear variation in the rate of sectioning, which indicates our services are not meeting the needs early enough for the Black population in Berkshire. And we have some fantastic partnership work developing with local authorities, with the police, to improve on that health inequality around experience of mental health services. Next slide, please. So tackling long waits, we know in the pandemic exacerbated the waiting list overall in the NHS. We have areas of long waits that we are tackling. So there is a multifactorial approach, including increased capacity through recruitment of more staff, engaging technology, engaging partners in the independent sector to provide additional capacity, which we quality assure ourselves and work jointly with, and then enhanced support and guidance for those patients, families, carers waiting for assessment and treatment with us. It's an absolute priority in our strategy to deliver on our key risk areas around waiting times. Next slide, please. And just a summary of the Trust's overall performance. We remain outstanding rated by the Care Quality Commission for the quality of our services and our leadership as an organisation. All of our financial targets have met, and as you've heard just from the auditor's update, clean audit opinion in the context of very challenging financial circumstances, and importantly, a very important outcome of financial stability and the right side of break even, which is a fantastic result for the Trust and provides that stability to strategically develop and work with our system partners. Just reference the high staff survey results, and we are actively working in the system. So in terms of a holistic view of the Trust performance is very positive, as shown there. Next slide, please. Okay, any questions on that? Otherwise, we can move on to the finance section.
Yeah, I think move on, Alex. Thanks. Oh, we've got, sorry, Ian Gammer's got a question.
Hi. So obviously very positive report, which is great. I just wonder, there's a persistent message coming from the government that the NHS is broken. Clearly broken means doesn't work, but clearly lots of things do work well, and you've got particularly good staff morale. So just wondering, is this message that the NHS is broken damaging morale in the trust at all?
I mean, I think if the narrative from government continues on broken, that is potentially going to damage morale and potentially going to risk patients being fearful of coming into the health service or worried about the kind of care and treatment that they're going to get. We know there is really great care and treatment. We need to build optimism and hope through our strategic direction as a trust and with our partners. We do know, though, there are key areas that we have to improve collectively, and that is primarily waiting and access and some of the high profile areas of care and treatment like cancer. And I expect the long-term plan for the NHS to directly address those areas, and it is going to require a real shift in terms of the approach to care and treatment into the community, into primary care, focusing on prevention. And we're going to need to do that in the context of no more money. The government has also been really clear about that. So I would worry if that broken narrative continues. I think we'll start to see that shift as we come out of the Lord Darzi report and into the NHS long-term plan. And Martin, you may want to give a view on that as well, as you've spoke to our staff about this.
Thank you very much. I think there's always a tension, isn't there, between demands and what you can do in health and the taxpayers' willingness to pay, and how you continue to get efficiencies in the system. So that's a sort of natural thing. It's right from the inception of the NHS that it's been like that. I agree with Alex. I think the government's messaging could be now a little bit more positive and what we're going to do about it. And I look forward to the 10-year plan. I think for this trust, because we're a mental health and community trust, and the Darzi report very much highlights the importance of community, the mental health community and primary care working together, that it fits into our core business. So perhaps in one sense we're in the mainstream, if you like, of the government's overall direction of travel. But I think there's always, when there's change, we get on and try and do the best we can for our patients, and I'm positive about this trust and our future success. So we'll have to wait and see a bit. But Ian, thank you for that. George has got his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to acknowledge about the work that's been done in terms of addressing health inequalities, particularly with anti-racism, because I attend the Berkshire Anti-Racism Community Forum. I think it's called the Unity Forum, led by Carla Innes, who's the inclusion manager. And I just want to acknowledge that those meetings are really crucial if we are to tackle the challenges of closing the gap in the experience between minority staff and white staff. So I think that needs to be really acknowledged, that there is good work going on there. My only thing is how do you actually measure the impact of these meetings, and how do you measure the fact that we are closing the gap? How do you go about doing that?
Alex, can you?
Yeah. So George, thank you, and we really appreciate your support as well in the community forum and our engagement with ACRE. I think we have to design outcome measures for better alignment for the needs of our communities with the communities, and the patient care and race equality framework is designed to do just that. So Jackie Dyer launched the patient care and race equality framework to bring communities and those experience those disparities in access, outcomes and experience alongside us as we design services. And I would expect to see a big shift from the trust around our co-production and engagement, and that we design these measures together. Within the patient care and race equality framework, there are measures, I think they're probably at the wrong end of the spectrum of care. So they talk about, sectioning. This is in mental health services, sectioning. They talk about use of restraint. We want to be talking about outcome measures that look to understand whether we're meeting the needs of communities with services at the right time and in the right place. So I look forward to the conversation, George, in the community forum and with ACRE and other partners about how we might do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, George. John Wellen. John, your microphone's off. That's it.
Now, hopefully it's now on. Firstly, can I remind governors that that Darcy said the initial requirement for the NHS is to provide healthcare at the point of need, free of charge. He still supports it. And that what we're hearing, in my view anyway, is a lot of political, I won't even call it rhetoric, spiel, sales talk to a outcome which I don't think the actual public want, but obviously we have to think. So I think as governors we need to keep in mind that our trust does a very good service. We need to, in my view, to focus on how we at the end of the line can help those who are first experiencing and supporting those who need our services, can help reduce, i.e. it's the prevention aspect, how we can help those lower down the chain, the charities, to actually provide that prevention.
Okay, John, thanks for that. I'm afraid it's a rather bad line, so I think we got the gist of what you were saying, but thanks for your comment. Okay, Alex, shall we move on? Is Paul going to say anything about the financial review?
Yes, please. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. If I can just get the next slide, please. Thank you. So just for a reminder, in terms of context going into 23-24, as Alex has alluded to, coming out of COVID, significant pressures in terms of our services and patient demand, but also we had an extremely challenging financial and economic climate. So we were still facing significantly higher levels of cost inflation than we had seen historically. The board agreed a planned surplus for the year of 1.3 million. Within that, we assumed we would be required to deliver efficiencies somewhere in the region of 14 million. We agreed a capital programme of 12.5 million. And if you take our planned surplus combined with the cash requirements to fund our capital programme, we expected to see a decrease in cash of 8.7 million. Let me just take the next slide, please. So over to our financial performance for the year. So overall, I think as it's been said, we had a successful year. We hit our financial plan, and in fact, we surpassed our planned surplus of 1.3 million, and we delivered a 3.8 million financial surplus. It is worth just noting for those that have read the annual accounts, that 3.8 million surplus is after adjusting for the financial impact of national changes in accounting treatments for our PFIs and asset impairments arising from our audited annual revaluations. So the total impact of these two adjustments was 10.3 million, but this value is excluded from the assessment of our financial performance by NHSE. So in the table, you will see that in the period, our income rose quite considerably by 26.6 million. This is fundamentally down to national price inflation funding that we receive through our NHS and other contracts. In addition to this, we also received additional NHS funding in the form of Mental Health Investment Standard. So this is NHSE funding, recognising the need to grow and restore parity for mental health services compared to acute services, and some specific service development funding, which is targeted funding on initiatives relating to mental health and community services. At the same time as we saw that increase in income, we also saw an increase in our cost base. This includes higher wage costs, obviously as a result of national pay awards, but also we saw an increase of around 250 whole-time equivalents during the year, and this was predominantly in line with agreed investments that we agreed with commissioners and other services. The previously mentioned accounting adjustments are also included in that increase of 33 million. We delivered on our efficiency target, and we saw successful reductions in spend in areas of out-of-area placement, reductions in costs relating to the leases of our space, and also benefits from new contracts that we negotiated. In terms of capital investments, we continue to utilise our cash reserves, and we spend in line with the limits that were agreed with Buckinghamshire, Oxford and Berkshire West ICS. We spent 10 million of our planned 12.5 million, with the difference being the timing on completion of the new place of safety build, which we're putting in at Prospect Park, which is now going to complete in the current financial year. Of the 3.8 million, of the 10 million, 3.8 million went on estates developments, and this included the opening of Resource House in Wokingham, which is the replacement for the old Forge building in Wokingham, which we moved out of earlier in the year, plus a number of smaller upgrades across the entirety of our estate. We also spent around 6.2 million on refreshing our IT equipment for our staff, and also infrastructure and developments, including IA and cybersecurity measures. In terms of cash, we closed in a strong position. Given our surplus and level of capital spend, we saw a smaller reduction than we expected of 2.6, and closed the year with cash of 52.6 million. And I think, as previously been mentioned, really important for us, we submitted our annual accounts ahead of the national deadline and received an unqualified opinion from EY, which is really positive for us. And just move on to the next slide, please. So looking ahead to the current financial year, fair to say still a significantly challenging operating environment and financial environment. In support of the wider system, we've set ourselves a 1.9 million surplus plan for the year ahead, with similar levels of efficiencies to 23-24 at about 13.6 million. We will continue to invest in our infrastructure, both our estates and IT infrastructure, and have agreed a capital programme of 13.1 million. And if you take the surplus and planned spend on capital investment, we expect our cash reserves to decrease by 5.8 million this year. I'll leave it there, Martin, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Paul. Any questions from governors? Yeah, Guy?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Just wanted to point out that the slide we were just looking at for 23-24, the column headings were old years.
Thank you, Guy. Thanks, Guy.
Thank you.
That's quite incredible, given the number of people who check these things before I go out. So we'll amend that for this afternoon. Thank you.
Spotted it last night. Thanks.
Thanks, Guy. Ian.
Hi. Obviously, good report. So, kind of forget education, really. So, how did you achieve the efficiency savings without affecting care? And sort of small question, what's the kind of intended use or purpose of the surplus?
So when we put the efficiency programme together, what we ensure is that we don't put efficiencies in place that are going to adversely impact quality of care So there is a process that we go through in terms of quality assuring our efficiency programs. So what we do is we look for areas where we can reduce our spend safely. So, negotiating lower prices on some of our contracts, but ensuring we're maintaining the quality of service from those contracts, areas like that. The other point around surplus is the reality is the surplus will contribute towards the system target, which is good for the system. Any cash benefit that we generate from our surplus, as an FT, historically, we would have had the ability to invest that as we chose in terms of our capital estate. At the moment, because we're constrained with how much capital spend we can actually spend on an annual basis, what we end up doing is it goes into the bank and increases our cash reserves, which there is a benefit of, but I think we'd all recognise the money would be better spent than sat in our account.
Are you hoping that the capital restrictions will get loosened up then, given what's sort of being said by Darzi and the government?
I would hope so. I mean, I think if you look at, it's not just our estate. I think if you look at the estate across Bob and across the country, the backlog maintenance numbers are eye-watering now, and I think it's been seen as a real impediment to productivity, which is what the government's driving at. So I think if they want to see the reductions in waiting lists and they want to see the investment in digital that they're talking about, that's very difficult to do under the current levels of capital funding that the NHS receives.
Okay, thanks so much. John Wellham. Oh, no, sorry, George. George, next.
Okay, I think I was going to actually ask you about the planned efficiency. I think Ian beat me to it.
Oh, okay.
I just want to understand, but really, overall, I mean, just to get an understanding, what would you say is the key? Because of the sort of situation with the NHS, we keep hearing it, like somebody mentioned about the NHS being broken and not being invested. But what would you say is a key financial challenge for us in the next year?
So I think the key financial challenge for us as an organisation is making sure that we can continue to deliver to the plan that we set, because that's really important and puts us in a strong position within the system. We've got strong controls and governance processes in place to make sure that we do that. We did it last year. We're on plan to do it again this year. The challenge across the NHS is, I guess, it's really difficult to identify one particular element. I think if I was looking at it, looking at what the NHS is required to deliver in terms of operational pressures, so managing the demand of patient care, decreasing waiting lists, doing that within the financial envelope that's available, and maintaining quality of care, I think is going to be the biggest challenge.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. We're just running a little late, but John and then Sarah, then we'll move on if you like.
Very quick, very, very interesting that the two people ahead of me were all thinking about the efficiencies, and I've listened very carefully to what we've just heard. I'm wondering how sustainable these efficiencies are, knowing full well that mental health funding is below what it should be. We're unlikely to get anything out of, I think the word used was reform, wasn't it, from the Westminster. So are you going to be able to maintain that? How in a mental health system, if it comes to push and you've got to start looking at the quality of care, how can you make that more productive?
So I think I got most of that. I mean, we're facing these challenges. We're starting to think about planning for the next financial year. I think we've always got to challenge ourselves about how productive we can be, and do we have waste in our system that can be removed safely and without compromising patient care. And I think we should always ensure to do that. I think I do take the point, and I do agree, you do get to a point where the level of efficiency that is required, you start getting into difficult conversations around, continuation of some services which we're not at yet. But I think I do take the point that it does become increasingly difficult to keep reducing your cost base in the context of trying to provide safe and effective services.
Okay, thanks, John. Sarah, then we'll move on.
Yeah, it's kind of a double question, actually. I was interested on the capital expenditure for the integrated care system, the contribution that Berkshire makes. I just want to understand two things in there. Firstly, how equitable that is against other contributors from other partners within the ICS. And secondly, what do we expect that contribution to lead to? And what does it mean for both patients and staff as well? Sorry, that was a very big question for you to answer in a short time.
Okay, that's fine. So, I mean, just in context, so Bob is allowed by Treasury to spend around about 90 million per year. So that's across three quite large acutes, so Royal Berks, Buckinghamshire Hospitals, and University Hospitals Oxford, ourselves, and Oxford Health. I think 13 million, there's about 10 million of that's out of that 90. If you look pro rata at the size of the organisations and the estate challenges, I think we probably get a reasonable amount, and it's an amount that we can accommodate in terms of delivering the capital expenditure that we want to in the space of a year, which also means that we're able to spend what we need to in terms of providing those services for our patients.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Sarah. Thanks, Paul. We better move on now to item 8, Trust Strategy Presentation. Alex, you're just going to flick through this, are you?
I've just got a summary page, Martin. I'm just going to share my screen. So hopefully governors have had the opportunity to read our current strategy that was in the pack. And by the power of AI and Copilot, I've summarised that strategy into one page at the click of a button. And I think it just help set some context, because we're going to be talking about our strategy refresh in the next slide, and I'll process for that. But in terms of the current strategy, we published that in August 23. Can everyone see this slide? Yeah. And we had context then, much of which holds in terms of those external environmental factors around financial challenges, increased demand, workforce shortages, political and economic instability, technological advancements, and so on. And our view around internal factors that were driving this strategy, which was largely from changing service models driven by the pandemic, the need to ensure a well and motivated, engaged workforce for everyone, not just 70 to 80% of those that feel positive about the organisation through the staff survey. Driving on integrated care as a strategic solution to some of the pressures the NHS and care system is facing, and really highlighting and focusing and profiling health inequalities, actually for the first time as a trust in our strategy, bringing that to the fore to support our mission and vision, as I'd outlined in the AGM presentation. Those factors, external, internal, led the board to agree these strategic priorities, 5 of them. And importantly, I was really pleased to be part of the agreement with the board around key outcome measures that defined our performance and progress against those strategic priorities and ambitions. And you can see in the strategy document in papers, we have a table of those key outcome measures that the board tracks in terms of delivery of our intent around the strategy. I think what I'd say at this stage, second year of the strategy, we know we've had the Darzi review, and the NHS 10-year plan is coming forward. So actually, in terms of our plan as a board to refresh strategy and engage our stakeholders, including yourselves as Council of Governors, the timing is really good to review and refresh the strategy in 2025 in the context of Darzi and the 10-year plan, which I think is due in the spring with any luck, as I think we need that planning certainty. So in October, we have our board strategy discursive, where I'll be proposing a timetable, activities and engagement to refresh the strategy, and the Council of Governors will have opportunities, plural, to contribute which I and the board will welcome. I'm going to stop there on the basis I think people have had a chance to read the current strategy. We've been talking about future context, and I think we're on a transition to the refresh process next year. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Alex. It's very good. As Alex said, there will be plenty of opportunity for governors to provide inputs and consideration of the strategies it develops. And of course, we're expecting some big changes from the government in due course, which will be important. So, if I may, could we move on to League Governor's annual review for the AGM? Brian, you're not going to go through the whole thing, are you?
No, just to say the format is the same as my first time last year. And I'd like to record very special thanks to Julie, who's a person who actually updates the data and the information. The report then gives rise to the slide presentation for the AGM this afternoon.
Excellent. And I echo your thanks to Julie. Okay, now on to something really interesting about one of our services, the CAMHS. Jade, I'm going to welcome you. We've got 20 minutes for presentation and I hope quite a decent discussion. So if you're there, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, I am here. Shall I share my own slides, Julie?
Yes, please. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I'm just loading, and it should hopefully load in PowerPoint live. Can everyone see that?
Just about coming up, I think. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Perfect. So those of you who don't know me, I know I've seen some familiar faces. My name is Jade Hens. I am the CAMHS team lead for the Getting Help and Mental Health Support team in Slough, so East Berkshire, and I'll be discussing a patient journey that we've had. I originally presented this in March at the Public Trust Board, so this might seem familiar to anyone that does attend those meetings as well. I'll be giving a very sort of quick overview of the service and then a patient story where we sort of received some really wonderful feedback from a parent. So just a little bit of context in case you're not familiar. So this is the Thrive model, which details the 5 needs-based groupings. So this is for children, young people and families. So our service sits within the Getting Help quadrant, so that blue one. I've made it nice and obvious with a big green arrow. And the aim is to sort of get that whole holistic approach to get people through sort of the mental health system and get them sort of the help that they need. So we sit in that blue quadrant, so that's low to moderate mental health presentations. We then get the Getting More Help, which is the purple area. That is more of the specialist CAMHS team, so those who require kind of more extensive mental health treatment. We've also got Getting Risk Support, so these are things like our rapid response team that go into hospitals for maybe young people that have overdosed or self-harmed quite severely. And we also have the Getting Advice teams as well. We do dip into the Getting Advice, so part of our roles as the Getting Help service is to sort of, if we can't help, we signpost and give advice, we give consultation. So we sort of go between the green and the blue. If we ever see anyone that needs escalating up to the purple, then we do have those internal processes for that, just so we're not having young people falling through the gaps, as it were. So just a little bit about my team, so specifically to Slough. So I have 3 teams that sit within my remit. I have 2 mental health support teams, or MHST, which I may refer to them in the future, and then 1 Getting Help team. So the threshold and the interventions for all of my teams are the same, so that low to moderate mental health presentation, but the MHSTs are based within schools. So we have what are called EMPs, or Education Mental Health Practitioners. They're assigned essentially 3 or 4 schools each, where when referrals come in from the schools, it's usually that EMP that would see that young person from that school. They tend to deliver the therapy in school unless there is a reason why they're unable to. So we may provide online work, or we may see them face to face at Fir Tree House, which is where we're based at Upton Hospital. And then the Getting Help team is essentially similar, but they're community based. So they are more based within Fir Tree House, like I just mentioned, and they would get referrals from, say, GPs, places of worship, the local authority, etc. So slightly different referral routes, and then slightly different sort of bases. So that is my MHST 1 and 2 team. And then I will be getting a third MHST, which will be implemented by January of next year, and then fully operational by the year after, so 2026. So my team is about to get incredibly large, and I think I'll have about 30 people under my remit come January next year. So a lot of growth, but also very exciting that we're able to kind of reach out to more schools within Slough and provide that that sort of early help intervention, as it were. And then just the Getting Help team, so slightly smaller team, but as I said, same remit, same thresholds, but they're just more community based. We do have the R's role, so on the right hand side you'll see a little asterisk, and they are due to start literally in a couple of weeks' time, and that's where we've created a partnership with the PCN, so Primary Care Network, so GP surgeries. So we'll be having 2 mental health practitioners based at GP surgeries within Slough. It's been piloted by RBWM, and it's been really, really successful. So we're quite excited to try it ourselves as well. So they will start with us on the 14th of October. So just a little bit about our sort of service background. There is a link at the bottom if you would like some more information, as it is a government provision. So it's just a quick read guide if you wanted to read that. So it's a government initiative. So I don't know if you're aware of the Green Paper, and just the aim is for every school and college to have a designated mental health lead by 2025. Personally, I don't think they're quite on track for that one, but that was a previous government sort of aim. But I know that our schools are taking up that mental health lead role, which is really, really positive to see. So it's a dedicated person within the school that has specific training on identifying mental health needs. And then we are, as I said, we sit within East Berkshire, so I'm one of 3 teams within our locality. One of my teams, so MHST 1, has been operational for quite a few years now, and then MHST 2 joined us about 18 months or so later. And then, like I said, I have got MHST 3 joining in January. We're just going through the recruitment part, so we've got about 7 new roles coming in. So it's been quite recruitment heavy the last couple of months for myself. We're roughly in 24 schools in Slough, and then with MHST 3 providing all the schools sort of sign up to the provision, we're hoping to be in sort of another 8 to 9 schools. We do have a slight cap that we have to stay roughly within 8,000 students on roll, whereas schools in Slough do tend to be quite big, so we are a little bit restricted on that one, but as it's a government initiative we do have to listen to that. There is talks with the new government about them wanting 100% MHST coverage, so I guess we will see what develops from that and whether that does actually happen. So we're waiting on more information. So our offer, so we offer both direct and indirect interventions. So those direct interventions are for those young people and also for sort of parents, carers, guardians. If the child is in primary school, we tend to do parent work unless we feel that the child has that kind of emotional maturity or emotional capacity to have the direct one-to-one therapeutic intervention. But if not, we do work directly with the parent. And then if they're 12 years or over, or sort of secondary school age, we will do that one-to-one support with them. But again, it is that low to moderate mental health presentations, very much an early intervention service. We believe that if you get in early enough, then hopefully it will prevent that kind of escalation or the need for the higher CAMHS tier services, as it were. And then we do the indirect interventions. So we do a lot in terms of multi-agency triaging. So the Getting Help team work quite closely with, say, the local authority. We will obviously be in the GP practices, as I mentioned earlier. Places of worship, we've done quite a few events at some local mosques and things like that. So there's a lot of sort of multi-agency holistic approach that we have. Our MHST, our EMPs, go into the schools and they do staff consultations, reflective practice, and kind of a soundboard for anything that if they have a student that they're not 100% sure whether they're appropriate for our team, we kind of give them that discussion point as well. We do joined up working with professionals. So like I said, local authority, schools, family support workers, youth workers, charities, you name it, we will do it. And then we do sort of pet care and we do additional training, workshops, assemblies. And I've just popped a link to the pet care website just below, just in case you're unaware of the initiative that we have in Berkshire. So what we support with, so I'm not going to go through and read these all individually, but these are sort of the early intervention, mild to moderate presentations that we would deal with. So very much, you won't be shocked to hear that mostly anxiety and low mood that we tend to work with, that comes through our service on a daily basis. And then very simple phobias. So like I said, we don't work with those higher presentations. So simple phobias, meaning kind of just one phobia. If it's more complex, then that would be more appropriate for higher CAMHS tier services. What we don't support with, so this is sort of just these presenting problems we wouldn't work with just because our interventions wouldn't have enough of an impact. All my clinicians are trained in low intensity CBT. These type of presentations would require high intensity CBT. And the sort of anyone that we think that wouldn't be recommended for our team, we would go through sort of the common point of entry or CPE for a referral to a specialist CAM service. So we don't just say no, we explain our reasons, we signpost them to the more appropriate service, and we can also help with that onward referral if need be, just to try and prevent people from falling through those gaps between services. So moving on to our patient journey case study. So this was a case that we had in our MHST2 team. The clinician was Evie Brooks, who did a fantastic job with this family. But Evie has since unfortunately left our service, which I'm still very sad about, a couple months ago. She lives over in Ealing, so she has just relocated to Ealing Trust. But the work that she did is amazing, and the school do still talk to us about this young person. So just some background information. So he is 8 years old and attends an SEN school. So he has an autistic diagnosis and awaiting an ADHD assessment. Most people know that ADHD and ASD assessments do take quite a long time in terms of their waiting. So he is still waiting on that assessment. So the reason for referral, so there was concerns around food avoidance, fears of sitting down because he felt like it could be dirty, social worries about appearance, especially while eating, so didn't like people watching him eat. This obviously impacted him a lot at school with several kids being around, and it did impact him at home, that even sort of worried about family seeing or watching him eat. This would mean that he would avoid things like school trips and eating at school, which obviously did have an impact on his health, but also his mental health. So just some other information. So did have issues before engaging with a previous service. So mum was quite apprehensive about attending sort of initial assessments and any further sessions, just because he's just sort of a little bit unsure, and that worry and anxiety sort of came out. So the assessment. So as the child had a diagnosis of ASD and pending ADHD assessment, and then with mum's concerns that he may not engage with a professional, it was necessary for Evie to put in those reasonable adjustments to try and make the assessment as successful but also as engaging as possible. So for an 8-year-old boy, it's, if we think about how nerve-wracking it could be coming into a complete stranger's office and having to talk about, you know, these worries that you have around food and things like that. So you know, we needed to make sure that that assessment was as engaging as possible for him. Otherwise, we may not have got the necessary information in order to know what type of support would be best for his needs. So Evie is a lover of Converse trainers, and she actually has ones with Pokemon on, which was one of his favourite interests. So she made sure that she wore her Pokemon shoes. You know, they had Pokemon cards that they secretly exchanged prior to the assessment, just so he could feel that Evie was not a professional to be worried about, and just, I guess, see Evie as just a human rather than a professional that will be assessing the issues that he was experiencing. They did have an assessment booked in, and they did attend. However, we did have to rebook them for a second assessment because the space and the temperature was a bit of a concern for the young person. They felt that the room was too small, and it was quite a warm room. I believe this was done at Fir Tree House. So they rebooked, they paused the assessment and rebooked just to make sure that he would feel more comfortable in able to kind of have that engagement. So based on sort of the needs identified, we did a parent-led, because of his age, a parent-led helping your child with fears and worries, which is our kind of anxiety, worry-based parent intervention. So we feel that with parent interventions, they're the best placed people to deliver the intervention. So essentially, the clinician will teach the parent the interventions, the toolkits, the steps to kind of help support their own child, because they know their child better than I guess anyone, and they'll be able to tailor it really specifically to the needs of their child. I'm not going to read through all of that because I know that there's a lot of words on the screen, but I can always send you this PowerPoint if you did want to read it more properly. So then the outcome of everything. So Evie completed a psycho ed session with patient X, as we're calling him, just for confidentiality. And a psycho ed is purely just going over things like his worries, teaching him a little bit about it from sort of a more child point of view. We tailor the language and things like that depending on the age of the client. So the parent completed 4 one-hour sessions, then had 2 30-minute phone calls, and then they do have an hour review afterwards, ready for discharge. And then that gives the opportunity, if there's anything kind of outstanding in the review session, we may also then offer some top-up sessions if we feel it's appropriate. So the result of this and the outcome has had a really positive impact. It was really, really significant. The family are really confident in terms of going out, doing things, and they even planned a holiday, which he's always refused to go on. He will eat and drink as normal. Improvements at school in terms of his behaviour, will now sit in some situations, which is a really, really positive thing because he just refused beforehand, and has been able to go on those school trips, less worried about, you know, him having people watching him eat or seeing him eat, and he has snacks in the lessons during the school day, attending school on time, limited anxiety, and he's no longer sharing a bed with mum because he had a bit of separation anxiety as well. So really, really sort of significant impact, and we do still hear from the school because they are within our MHST, so we have regular check-ins, and is still doing really, really well. So it just goes to show that the impact that, you know, one of our interventions can have is such an amazing thing. And like I said earlier, if you catch it early enough, it can really prevent that escalation. And then some feedback. So again, I've linked the full PDF because it's over a page long. It is quite a long page in feedback, but I did just pull out some lovely quotes that I thought were really, really kind of significant for us and for our team. Particularly the first one: "You're the first team of people to make make my son and myself not feel like a tick box." And I know that there's often this sort of discussion and this sort of theme of feeling like people are a tick box when they come in to say anything that's, you know, medical or professional, and actually for her to feel that we weren't that, and to tailor the assessment and to tailor his needs was a really, really lovely thing. And we did have a couple of phone calls with her before the assessment and after, and she just really appreciated that kind of reassurance and being spoken to like a human, because there are waiting lists, there is a huge demand on our mental health services, and actually for her to feel like she wasn't just being kind of shunted and to feel as if she was sort of a human being, really, really lovely. That's the end of my presentation, but if anyone has any questions or anything like that, they're more than welcome to ask.
Great, thanks so much. All right, you've got a question. John Wellham first, and then Guy.
A very, very interesting presentation, and I think we all wish it could happen far more often than it does. I'll just make one comment. Evie wasn't an artificial cabbage doll.
There we go. Thank you, John.
Okay, Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Jade. Presentation. Just wondering, if a young person has an eating disorder, not food avoidance as we just looked at, but eating disorder, do they go to does our eating disorder service cover all ages?
So we have the BEDS eating disorder, so Berkshire Eating Disorder Service. They, I believe, are most ages. I think when you get to kind of add towards the adult, with CAMHS, most services are up to sort of roughly 17. But depending on what CAMHS service it is, depending on when they turn 17, they may actually be directed to adult services due to their long waiting list. But there is an eating disorder service that sits within Berkshire, but also has those higher presentations as well for eating disorders where physical health is significantly impacted. So yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Right, who's next? I've forgotten. You've got A60. I can't see on the screen.
It's
sorry.
James.
Oh, James, sorry.
Yeah.
James, over to you.
Sorry. Yeah, on my laptop, always seem to appear A60. I can't change the name. Thanks very much. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. It's wonderful. Wonderful service and great results in this case, and surely in most cases. One of my queries, of course, that often mental health issues arise from the environment in the family, within the family and the household. So it's great that you have initial great results. I was just wondering if there is something in place so that, of course, in the medium to long run, it can be ensured that there's a continuous follow-up, and that eventually these children will not go back to their initial condition.
Yeah, absolutely. So because we work really, really closely with the schools and the community-based referral routes that I mentioned earlier, we can do re-referrals, we can do top-up sessions if it's needed. If the presentations have significantly increased, we can then have a look at that. And as I said, we've got those higher, more specialist CAMHS services as well, that if we feel that we need to do an onward internal referral, then absolutely. There will be people that get missed. I think, if you think about mental health services and schools not always identifying, there will be people that are missed. But we do a lot of work with the schools in terms of training, those workshops, parent coffee mornings. There's so much that we do to try and kind of avoid that. But we do sometimes have people come back to service, even if it's just for top up, or they come back to service because the presentations have sort of decreased, as it were, and they're asking for advice as to what the next steps are, and then we would guide them through the process for those specialist teams.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Jade, in addition to thank you. Sorry, I have a question.
Just a minute.
Yes, in addition to this.
Thank you very much, Chair. Jade, really helpful. Thank you very much. We're all fully aware that there are some rather long waiting lists at the moment, particularly for neurodiverse conditions and diagnoses. What impact does that have on you and your team?
So neurodiversity is a difficult one for our service because if they're undiagnosed, we don't know whether they're presenting problems are due to the neurodiversity symptoms, as it were, or whether actually it is actually that they're struggling from an anxiety point of view. So we quite often get young people through our service who find it difficult to emotionally regulate, and their behavior issues. And when you're reading the referral, you're sitting there thinking, right, this is ADHD. This is definitely ADHD. And I have a child with autism and ADHD. So when I read a referral, I'm like, this is my child a few years ago. So we do find that it is difficult because they don't have that diagnosis. So we don't know whether our interventions will actually have make a difference. Because if it's, say, emotional regulation, because they've got a sensory overwhelm or a sensory overstimulation, well, our mental health interventions aren't going to be able to do anything for overstimulation. So what we do, we work quite closely with services such as GEMS or Parenting Special Children. So what we do is if we know that they're on a waiting list for, say, a neurodiversity assessment, we will refer the parents to GEMS and Parenting Special Children to do the parent program, because they can start doing some work with their children whilst they wait for the assessment. Once they've done that, they can then come back to us and say, right, this is what I've done. These are still the issues, because sometimes we find that Parenting Special Children and GEMS toolkits are enough for that young person to be able to regulate, et cetera, and not need our intervention. But they can come back to us and say, right, nothing's changed, et cetera, and then we may do some work with them. We'll do some work with the school as to what adjustments can be put in place, what are they doing to support, et cetera, because actually sometimes it's not a mental health intervention that's needed, it is just that reasonable adjustments type intervention that is needed. But yes, it does blur the boundaries a little bit, because our interventions aren't specifically for neurodiversity difficulties. They are purely only mental health difficulties.
Thank you. I think there was someone else who was going to ask a question. Could you ask, if you've got a question, could you just put your, flag it up on the hands on Teams, because then I can see. Arian, and then Ross.
Yes. Look.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Hajit. I have a suggestion for mental health services. How about, have they ever considered organizing short-term and long-term structured courses to aid the patients with mental health conditions, incorporating yoga, mindfulness, cognitive behavior therapy, etc., all the strategies, maybe like 3-month courses or 6 months courses, something like that?
So we don't do structured courses in that sense, because it's with CBT. So the NHS do favour evidence-based interventions, which is what CBT is. But I know that our clinicians do have a personal interest in things like yoga, chair yoga, mindfulness, and things like that. So they do weave that type of like breathing techniques and things like that. They do weave that within their interventions. We have lots and lots of resources. Part of our training program is that we do things on self-care, where they talk about things like that. They'll do some exercises with the group of people that are there. So we don't do anything specifically, but we do have, again, apps that we recommend to young people that include things like yoga, mindfulness, etc. But unfortunately, it's a little bit out of the CBT remit, but they do weave it through where possible. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. I'm just conscious of the clock. Ross, and then we'll move on.
Okay, thank you. Great presentation, and it sounds as though it's really effective. You obviously are responsible for Slough. I just wondered, is there something similar in the west of Berkshire?
Yes, so I don't think it's fully been adopted in the west from what I know, but I do know that Reading do have an MHST that is headed up by, I think it's Amanda Mavunga, and then they do have the equivalent of our Getting Help team. They do also have that R's role that I mentioned of working with the PCN, the GP surgery. So they do have equivalent of, but I couldn't talk for as far as Newbury and over that way. But I do know that West, particularly Reading and Wokingham, do have the equivalent to those services. They might just call them something different. There's one in Wokingham, I can never say the acronym, but it's Primary Mental Health for You, something along those lines. It's the world's longest acronym because we love an acronym in the NHS, but they do have the equivalent, and I work quite closely with that team lead as well.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Jade. Fantastic presentation, fantastic team. So please pass on our thanks to your team for all the work they're doing. And we'll let you go. We now have to move on.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Item 11, the committee group chairs and members. We've seen the report, so I guess just any questions really for the chairs. Any comments? No. Okay. Executive reports from the trust. Welcome, Alex Banbury, on patient experience, Q1. Alex, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the complaints manager for the trust, and I will share my own presentation if that's okay.
Of course.
Thank you. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, it's fine.
Wonderful, thank you. So yes, this is the patient experience report for Q1. I won't talk you through all of the figures on the page, but as I'm sure most of you know, our patient experience team encompasses complaints, our patient involvement, and then our Alex service, and a lot of that is encompassed in this report here. So we talk about the number of contacts we get through I Want Great Care. So you can see we had over 9,000 contacts within Q1, which is about 6% of the patients that we're seeing, and we are on average getting a 4.78% rating, which is out of 5 stars, which is very good. We also received 68 formal complaints. Only 3 of those were complaints that had already been responded to once, and then the patient or complainant came back with further concerns. We have managed to continue to have 100% responses sent out within the agreed timescale with the complainant, and we have had 5 MP inquiries during that time. So if we look a little bit at I Want Great Care, things that have gone particularly well, and this is the feedback that we get from patients following their accessing a service. So the things that they felt went quite well was emotional support and empathy shown by staff. That's gone up from 94% in the previous quarter to 98%, which is a really high amount of positive feedback to be getting. Then they were happy with being involved in the decisions and having their preferences respected. And again, that's gone up from 93% to 98%. And patients felt involved, involving patients and carers in the care. And that has gone up from 89% to 96%. So a real increase there. And there is some opportunities for improvement that we've identified, which is access to healthcare advice and continuity of care and transitions. And there is work going on within these areas to make sure that we are improving, such as implementation of the One Team, who are working to close the gap and bring some continuity to patients who are transitioning between services and back into the community. So we have a targeted action plan. By March of 2025, we would like to receive 10% feedback from patients. So 10% of the patients who access our services are giving feedback that we can then use to make improvements in future. At the moment, we're sat at 6%, but we did have a rapid improvement event in May, which was targeted at the services that are getting quite low feedback from I Want Great Care. So we worked with those services to put in place a stepped plan for them so that we can try and work towards this target, and they've gone away with some achievable actions that they're going to put in place to try and get more feedback from the patients accessing their services. We continue to promote PALS in our ward community meetings at Prospect Park Hospital. And we're using data to support PSERF. And we're looking at adding a further diversity question into the I Want Great Care questioning to support this ongoing work that's being done. And we have worked to make sure that we are strengthening the divisional reporting so that the divisions are really clear on the information that's coming through on I Want Great Care, and that they're getting the feedback in a way that they can then use to go forward and make some service change. In terms of complaints and PALS, the highest increase that we've seen is community nursing has gone from 3 complaints in the previous quarter to 6, and there has been a decrease in formal complaints not being found to be not upheld. So we are upholding more complaints at the moment, or partially upholding. So as I'm sure you're aware, we only categorise complaints in 3 ways: not upheld, which means absolutely nothing that was raised has been found. There's been evidence to support that. Then partially upheld, where at least one element of the complaint or more has been, or fully upheld, where everything that was raised has been upheld. So we are seeing a decrease in not upheld, but we all are also seeing an increase possibly in more complex complaints, and therefore there are more likely to be some elements upheld as part of that. In terms of the CQC, we've received 4 complaints from them. All are in relation to Prospect Park Hospital and the Mental Health Act, but there aren't any specific themes within those complaints that are being raised. We've had 2 cases that remain open with the Parliamentary Health Service Ombudsman, but in Q1, no further cases were taken to the Parliamentary Health Service Ombudsman that have been opened with us yet. PALS received a total of 618 contacts during that time period, and 461 of those were not trust-related contacts. So they're people contacting us about their care that was given by the Royal Berkshire, for example, or Frimley. And a lot of work is being done by our PALS team at the moment in terms of setting up meetings to create a network across the services, the hospitals, the other organisations that we deal with most, so Royal Berkshire, Oxford Health, Frimley, and to look at how we can reduce the numbers, because I'm sure it's also an issue for them as well, people contacting them. But really they want to complain about our services. So work is being done to bring together meetings to start a network where we can try and share best practice, but also look at how to reduce the number of people incorrectly contacting the wrong service. In terms of other activity, and I do have to apologise, this part of the patient experience is not my forte, and I've been asked to do this presentation today. And I've not been able to speak to them, so I can't speak to much more than what's on the slide. But our lived experience workforce programme is something that's undertaken within the patient experience sphere, and they are working on the creation of LEAPs. And I know that as part of the work that's being done, our 15 steps programme, which is where, as again, I'm sure you know, we go into one of our services and we walk the first 15 steps that a patient would walk into those services and look at the environment, and is the signage clear, is it inviting, all those sorts of things. So we had 13 of those within Q1, and we have a lot more scheduled towards the end of the year, and we're already planning for next year. And from what I've heard in meetings, there has been some really positive outcomes from that, both in terms of positive in seeing some really good inviting environments, and some positives in terms of learning from what we've seen. The patient safety partner recruitment process continues, and place visits from the end of September to November will take place. Are there any questions?
Thanks so much, Alex. Any questions, please? No? No, I think not. Oh, Alex, thank you very much. Very clear presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Bye.
And then the performance report, Alex. Did you want to?
Thanks, Martin. I mean, I'll take Julian's report and the performance as read, and happy to take questions.
That's fine. Thank you. Any questions on the performance report? Guy.
Yeah, hi, Alex. So just a couple of points I just wanted to understand. On page 141, talks about it has a metric for the number of breakthrough bed days occupied by patients who are discharge-ready community, which I know is very high, 820. But it made me wonder, do we have out-of-area placements for community, or maybe that's a pressure on the acutes? And I've got another question for afterwards, please.
Yeah, we don't have out-of-area placements as we do for mental health patients, and this is an indication of the inefficiency of flow through our community rehab wards, physical health wards, and is a function of how the system is working from acute to community, into discharge to place of residence, or into a package of care with local authority partners. So it's an indication of inefficiency in that flow system.
Okay, thank you. And the other question was on page 152, this is the risks. It mentions a risk number 6 is finance. It talks about an impact on funding flows to the trust. Does that mean that we ever have problems accessing the money which we're entitled to?
Is Paul still on the call?
Yes, I am, Alex. Yeah, do you want me to take that?
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically, if you look at the system as a whole, Bob, and to some degree Frimley, the more financial pressure the system's under and the higher the deficit, they will start looking to make decisions in terms of how they spend that money, and that potentially could impact the amount of funding that we receive and others receive. So I think it is a live risk that we do need to be aware of and try and manage.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Guy. Thanks, Paul. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Alex. So item 13, appointment of lead and deputy lead governor. Just to say that Brian Wilson has been reappointed as the lead governor and John Wellham as the deputy lead governor. So congratulations to you both. Keep up the good work. Governor feedback. Anything governors wanted to raise? Any other business of any sort? Okay. In which case, thank you very much to everyone. The dates of the next meeting are on the bottom of the agenda. So with that, I'll say thank you to the presenters, and I'll see you all at the AGM this afternoon, I hope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.